1 minute ago, Rachael Ray's husband, John Cusimano, received the news no spouse ever wants to hear. Rachel's doctors confirmed an aggressive form of pancreatic cancer, and the prognosis was grim. As he sat in the sterile waiting room at Memorial Sloan Kettering, John clenched the crumpled hospital form, eyes brimming with disbelief. This is the woman whose laughter filled every morning kitchen, whose boundless energy turned home cooking into primetime adventure. Now, his world narrowed to a single terrifying certainty. Time was slipping away. Just 2 weeks earlier, Rachel had chalked up a dull ache in her back to stress and long hours on set. She brushed it off with a shrug and a quip. "John, you know me, I never rest." Then powered through a marathon taping schedule. Her husband, a manager and musician who'd shared her life for nearly 2 decades, had watched with concern, gently urging her to see a physician. In their cozy Manhattan apartment, between recipe tests and late-night brainstorming sessions, he had insisted she slow down. She had smiled and nodded, as she always did, but insisted everything was fine. That fine fractured the moment the oncologist returned with lab results. John replayed the doctor's words in his mind. "I'm so sorry. It's stage 3 pancreatic adenocarcinoma. We need to begin treatment immediately." In that instant, the life they built, filled with impromptu pancake breakfasts, laughter in the test kitchen, quiet rooftop dinners, shattered into fragments. John's first thought: how could he bear to lose the vibrant spirit who reinvented comfort food for millions, who stood by his side through every high and low? On cue, John's phone buzzed with an incoming call from Rachel's best friend, Molly. With trembling lips, he shared the diagnosis. Molly's sobs echoed through the receiver, and John closed his eyes, holding back tears that threatened to spill. Behind him, Rachel's stylist was due for a makeup test downstairs, a reminder of the show she loved. John rose from his chair, pressing the hospital sheet to his chest like a shield against reality, then texted his producer. "We have to pause production. This is urgent." Pulling Rachel into a quiet exam room, John reached for her hand. The familiar warmth grounded him for an instant. Her eyes, usually sparkling with mischief, welled with fear. He swallowed his own panic and offered the words he knew must be spoken. "We'll fight this, sis. I promise you're not alone." She managed a shaky smile that barely concealed her pain. Together, they returned to her side where the nurse lingered, watching two champions of optimism now facing their greatest challenge. In the days since, John has devoted every moment to arranging specialists, gathering second opinions, and mapping out an aggressive treatment plan. He's researched clinical trials, reached out to oncologists across the country, and converted their sunlit kitchen into a home command center lined with medical binders. He's orchestrated a care schedule that ensures Rachel's favorite meals, brothy soups, soft scrambled eggs, vibrant smoothies, are always on hand between chemotherapy sessions. Their home, once a sleek studio, now hums with the soft beep of infusion pumps and the hum of intravenous drips. Ever the fighter, Rachel threw herself into planning their next episode of 30-minute meals, drafting backup scripts in the infusion chair. John sat beside her, tapping out notes on his tablet, calling in fellow chefs for moral support. At night, he reads research articles into the glow of the living room, then closes his eyes to visions of her happy, healthy face. He has framed every oncology appointment as another kitchen challenge to conquer. Drizzle radiation at 6 o'clock, stir in chemo at 8, garnish with targeted therapy mid-morning. But between treatments, John and Rachel have carved out moments of normalcy. They stroll in Central Park at sunrise, hand in hand, Rachel sipping herbal tea while John hums softly, recalling the songs he wrote in her voice. They watch old episodes of cooking shows they once produced together, laughing at their own bloopers. He clips fresh flowers from their balcony garden, Rachel's favorite peonies, and arranges them on her dresser, a reminder of life's simple joys amid uncertainty. As the world spins on, social media buzzing with supportive messages from fans, fellow celebrities pledging donations to cancer research, John's focus narrows to the woman beside him. Each morning, he whispers, "Today, we take one more step," and Rachel squeezes his hand. He is prepared to say goodbye if that day comes, but refuses to let despair define their story. In every comforting smile, in every shared meal, in every whispered vow, John stands as her steadfast companion, unfurling hope even in the shadow of tragedy. That afternoon, after officially pausing production, John rushed from the studio to Rachel's side at Sloan Kettering. He arrived just as she finished her first round of chemotherapy, the foreline gently pulsing in her arm. Rachel's cheeks were flushed, but she managed that trademark grin, a brave effort to shield him from fear. John pulled two chairs close together and sat as doctors talked through next steps. A 6-week chemo cycle, followed by imaging to assess response, then discussion of potential Whipple surgery. He squeezed her hand through every word, absorbing the medical jargon like a recipe he needed to master. Back home that evening, John turned their family kitchen into a care station. He laid out pill organizers labeled with days of the week, set out pitchers of electrolyte drinks, and lined up bowls of Rachel's favorite pureed soups. While she napped, he carefully measured spoonfuls of chicken broth and finely chopped chicken into small mason jars so she could eat tender protein between treatments. In a flurry of hospital pamphlets and online journals, he compiled charts tracking her blood counts, tumor markers, and symptom diary entries, anything to make sense of the unknown ahead. Despite exhaustion, John insisted on keeping a semblance of normalcy. He lit candles on their dining table and played soft jazz through the Bose speakers as Rachel sipped blended smoothies. Between bites, she told him stories about upcoming episodes she'd filmed earlier in the week, segments on one-pan breakfasts and sous vide dinners. John listened and took notes on the whiteboard, planning how to adapt her recipes to her weekend appetite. He'd learned to infuse pureed cauliflower with garlic and Parmesan, turning bland into comfort food she could swallow easily. The next morning, John returned to the set alone, determined to keep the show on track without sacrificing Rachel's well-being. He met with her producer and line director in an empty studio, whiteboards still cluttered with storyboards from yesterday's shoot. "We'll repackage the footage from last week's segments," he said, pressing a laser pointer to plans for a Best of Fall Soups special. They agreed to air that compilation while Rachel recovered, giving her time to rest. John drafted scripts for the on-camera host to fill in gaps, and he even did screen tests himself, wincing at how strange it felt without Rachel's familiar presence. Meanwhile, word of her diagnosis spread through the tight-knit crew. Hair and makeup artists sent get-well gifts, plush robes, artisan tees, soft hats for chemo days. Cameramen pooled tips to rent a mobile recliner for her trailer. Even the grips and gaffers, usually unnoticed, pinned cards that read, "We've got you in our focus." John made a point of delivering each gift, personally thanking every department head. He wanted Rachel to feel surrounded, not isolated. Midweek, John flew with Rachel to Maryland for a consultation at Johns Hopkins. During the flight, he cradled her hand as she drifted between sleep and nausea from antiemetics. He scrolled through the hospital's research network on his tablet, bookmarking promising immunotherapy trials. At Hopkins, they met with a specialist who recommended combining FOLFIRINOX with a novel checkpoint inhibitor. Back in the car, John promised to contact every expert they'd heard from, vetting each option. He texted old college friends in oncology programs, asking for insights. His text thread read like a battalion mobilizing on his wife's behalf. Returning home late that night, John found Rachel asleep in her recliner. He pulled a blanket around her, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Tomorrow we map out the next recipe." In the morning, he recorded new commentary tracks for their streaming channel, pairing footage of her soup demos with voiceover instructions she could record at her own pace. He edited each clip, adjusting pacing to account for low energy. Never one to accept defeat, John transformed their setback into fresh content that kept fans engaged and donation links active. He also reached out to close friends in the culinary world, Emeril Lagasse, Anthony Bourdain's estate, and Ina Garten, seeking benefit partners who could host fundraisers under Rachel's name. Within days, plans were underway for a Cook for a Cure televised event, with top chefs donating recipes and proceeds going to pancreatic cancer research. John handled sponsorship calls, negotiated airtime, and finalized date coordination, all from Rachel's guesthouse kitchen. That weekend, John and Rachel took a brief respite. He drove her to a quiet lakeside cabin, where digital detox rules applied. They sat on a picnic blanket, eating grilled cheese melts, light, buttery, and easy on her stomach, and watched the water. Rachel traced patterns on the lake's surface, and John read aloud from old letters Dr. King had written her, reminders of purpose and perseverance. In that moment, they were simply a couple ignoring time, before treatment, before production, before a diagnosis could define them. Returning to New York, John resumed filming segments Rachel could pre-record, step-by-step tutorials shot in controlled bursts around infusion days. He wore her signature yellow scarf on camera as a tribute, acknowledging at the start of each clip that she was on the mend, and I'm honored to fill in. He vowed the first words she'd hear when fully recovered would be his, "Welcome back, chef." And as the camera's red light blinked on and off, John held that promise, for her, and for every fan waiting with hopeful breath. The morning of Rachel's scheduled Whipple procedure arrived with a brutal chill in the New York air. John rose before dawn, dressed in a crisp white button-down, her favorite outfit on camera, and clipped a single peony to his lapel, a flower she'd once pressed between the pages of her own cookbooks. He placed it on her nightstand, along with 2 photographs, one of them dancing barefoot in their kitchen, the other from their wedding day. As Rachel slept fitfully, John stared at those images and promised himself that no matter the outcome, he would carry her joy forward. At the hospital entrance, he signed in with shaking hands and exchanged a quick smile with the admission nurse who had come to admire Rachel's Saturday morning segments. In the pre-op holding room, Rachel lay on a gurney, eyes closed, for lines branching like roots. John slipped beside her, holding her hand through the paper gown. He leaned close and whispered, "You've got this, my love. I'll be right here when you wake." A tear escaped him as she cracked one eye, offered him a courageous nod, and then drifted into anesthesia's hush. The 7-hour surgery felt eternal from John's vantage in the waiting room. He paced the linoleum floor, chanting her favorite mantras under his breath, easy as pie, strong as soup, a private code to summon calm. The surgeon emerged at last, scrub cap still draped on his arm, and delivered the news. The operation was technically successful, but they had encountered unexpected adhesions around Rachel's pancreas. He repaired them, but cautioned John that recovery would be a marathon, not a sprint. John thanked him, gathering the surgeon's words as both relief and warning. That first night in the ICU was the hardest. John sat in a stiff recliner beside Rachel's bed. The beeping of monitors kept time with his ragged breaths. Every 10 minutes, he checked her chart, blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen saturation. Each stable reading brought him a measure of hope. He thumbed through iPad folders of Rachel's old cooking tutorials and played the soft voiceovers she had recorded days before, letting her instructions on artisanal bread knead away his fear. As midnight approached, he slipped Rachel's slippers onto her feet and covered her with a comforter in her signature shade of chartreuse. Drawing a deep breath, he arranged the peony petals around her pillow, a silent prayer that she, too, would blossom back to health. In the hours that followed, John alternated between dozing in a corner chair and standing at the window, watching streetlights etch patterns on the pavement below. Family texted him, Linda updating on lab draws, their college-aged niece sending prayers, a running buddy offering home-cooked soup once Rachel left the hospital. With every supportive message, John felt a tether to the world outside these doors, reminding him that Rachel's fight belonged not only to them, but to countless fans who had drawn inspiration from her warmth. By dawn, nurses gently roused John to tell him Rachel had opened her eyes and asked for water. He held the cup to her lips, guiding a soft sip. Her voice was hoarse, but she managed a whisper, "John, coffee?" He choked back tears, gently coaxing nurses to bring the strongest roast from the ICU cafe. When he returned with a tiny styrofoam cup, he blew on it and helped her sip, her first taste of normalcy since diagnosis. They laughed quietly at the absurdity of coffee in such quarters, the moment crystallizing both their vulnerability and resilience. Over the next 2 weeks, Rachel endured ups and downs, days when she read aloud from her mother's old recipe cards, and days when she drifted too lightly between sleep and pain. John orchestrated her environment with meticulous care, soft instrumental playlists, a rotating gallery of family photo collages, chaplain visits, and warm linen changes timed to her circadian rhythms. He took nights on call so she could rest, then rose with the sun to read her chapters from the memoir she'd begun drafting in treatment, each page a testament to perseverance. Meanwhile, the production team had built a portable green screen unit in her hospital room. When she felt strong enough, John guided her through camera positioning, lighting adjustments, and teleprompter tests for a short cooking segment. She appeared on screen in a custom hospital gown that mimicked her studio wardrobe, stirring an invisible pot as if the world outside had never paused. In that moment, John saw not just his wife, but a force of nature reclaiming her element. Lighthearted, generous, unstoppable. On the day Rachel was discharged, John arranged a small ceremony in the hospital garden. Nurses and doctors gathered to wish her well. He presented her with a bouquet of mixed flowers, heather for admiration, tulips for new beginnings, and Rachel, leaning on her walker, flicked her hair back and declared, "Let's go home and cook." The applause that followed was not for a TV host, but for a survivor. As they drove away, John reached across the console and took Rachel's hand. The skyline of Manhattan glowed ahead, both familiar and transformed by their ordeal. Rachel gazed out the window and smiled through the haze. John vowed to keep her home filled with flavors, laughter, and unwavering care. Together, they steered back toward their kitchen, where home, he knew, would once again mean healing, one meal at a time. The first morning back at home felt charged with fragile possibility. Rachel's bedroom, once a dizzying blur of hospital monitors and antiseptic smells, now glowed with soft morning light cascading through linen curtains. John gently lifted her onto the edge of the bed, spoken words giving way to tender action. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, placed a cup of ginger tea against her lips, and watched as she sipped, eyes brightening with relief. He settled on the edge of the mattress, his hand never leaving hers. As she described her dreams of crisp eggs and toast she could finally taste again. In that moment, he realized their routines had shifted forever. Every meal, every moment would carry the weight of gratitude and hope. The kitchen, their long-standing sanctuary, became the first frontier of Rachel's rehabilitation. John had stocked shelves with gentle ingredients: oats, soft fruits, pasture-raised eggs, bone broth, and today they would test a simple spinach feta frittata. He cleared the counters, positioned sturdy stools so Rachel could stand comfortably, and set up her electric mixer. She wore a cozy apron he'd chosen, the same vintage style she'd donned countless times on camera. He watched her whisk eggs and pour in steamed spinach, marveling at how seamlessly she reclaimed her place behind the stove. Their cat, Boy, wove between their legs, a reminder that life continued, delighting in the renewed domestic rhythm. While Rachel chopped softened peppers, John dialed into a virtual meeting of the cook for a cure fundraiser he'd organized. On his laptop screen, chefs from across the country beamed in to share recipe ideas and pledge donations. He introduced Rachel as their honored guest of survival, and the collective cheers that erupted felt like a vast embrace. She beamed back, blinking away tears, her voice steady yet tender as she offered a quick wardrobe tip. "Just add a splash of lemon to brighten your salsa. Trust me." Even in recovery, her generosity shone. John closed the meeting feeling pride and relief. Her presence alone would raise more than any solo segment could. Mid-afternoon brought the arrival of her physical therapist, a warm-hearted specialist who guided Rachel through gentle stretches in the living room. John hovered nearby, mimicking each movement at her side: hamstring lifts, light lunges, torso rotations. He offered quiet encouragement as she battled fatigue, reminding her that every small victory, extension of hip, steadier balance, marked a step toward independence. They paused for a water break, and Rachel leaned back with genuine laughter, teasing, "I'll never take a full-length twist for granted again." John laughed with her, relief flooding his chest. Even mobility regained felt like triumph in their recalibrated world. Later, John led Rachel through old show footage queued on the living room TV so she could nod off each clip with commentary. They watched the comfort food special, where Rachel had perfected a creamy tomato soup. She perked up at the familiar aroma suggestion: bay leaf, fresh basil, and in whispered excitement planned to film a live kitchen in recovery segment once she built enough strength. John scribbled notes on a tablet, scheduling recording sessions around upcoming doctor's appointments, mindful of her energy peaks and valleys. As evening set in, he lit candles on their dining table, and arranged a simple dinner of pureed vegetable broth and soft ricotta mashed potatoes. Rachel ate slowly, savoring each spoonful as if each taste carried new meaning. John looked on, marveling at how the smallest details, seasoning by hand, sharing an encouraging glance, wove threads of normalcy into their extraordinary days. After dinner, they settled on the sofa in matching pajamas he'd gifted her, curating a playlist of her favorite acoustic songs. John draped a knit blanket over both laps and held her close as lyrics drifted through the room, the simple rhythm of soft guitar providing a gentle exhale to the day's intensity. Before bed, John guided Rachel through a short meditation, an exercise she once recorded for her show but never practiced. He instructed breathing patterns, coached her through muscle relaxation, and recited affirmations of strength and calm. She whispered, "Thank you for finding these moments." And John pressed his lips to her forehead, his heart full of both pain and wonder at her grace. He promised himself to hold on to these quiet pauses as fiercely as he held the commitment he'd made before her diagnosis, to fight every moment, to love without measure, and to cherish every sunrise in their kitchen and every whispered vow in the night. In the hush between sleep and wakefulness, John lingered at her side a while longer before rising to the coffee machine. As he placed a fresh mug beside the bed, its aroma a promise of morning companionship, he whispered, "Good night, my love. Tomorrow, we begin again." And with that, he closed his eyes too, carrying the weight and wonder of their journey into the soft promise of dreams. When Rachel marked her 1-month treatment anniversary, John knew it was time to rejoin their community of fans in a more public way. He arranged for her to record a special Recovery Kitchen episode from their sunlit garden, complete with a rolling camera setup and on-site sound crew. Borrowing Rachel's favorite herbs, basil and oregano, he prepped narrow basil sprigs and pureed tomatoes in portable blenders. Rachel sat comfortably in a high-back chair, wearing a soft knit cardigan and her signature half-apron. Between takes, John poured her small sips of homemade bone broth and gently wiped stray tomato seeds from her chin. In her opening line, "I may be healing, but my love of flavor never stops," she reclaimed her presence exactly as she intended. Over the next several days, John oversaw production of 8 Recovery Kitchen shorts. Each segment ran no more than 3 minutes to accommodate Rachel's fluctuating energy. They covered simple recipes: oatmeal with stewed apples, steamed green beans with lemon zest, ginger-infused teas, all designed to nourish and comfort. John filled in on camera for quick ingredient demonstrations, but whenever the camera cut away, he stepped back to let Rachel's voice guide viewers. After the final shoot, he congratulated her on working through a 120-degree midday sun that would have sidelined her weeks earlier. She leaned into him and whispered, "I couldn't have done it without you." And he tucked her arm in his, feeling the depth of their partnership more keenly than any evolution of their on-air dynamic. With filming paused again for Rachel's next CT scan, John shifted to organizing the cook for a Cure virtual gala. He reached out to dozens of industry friends, emerging chefs, supermarket brands, restaurant groups, securing donated items for live auction, gift basket bundles of artisanal cookware, signed cookbooks, private virtual cooking lessons. Between coordinating bids and scripting host segments, John revisited Rachel's doctor's advice, balancing advocacy with respite. He carved out midday breaks to bring Rachel fresh-baked zucchini muffins when her nausea receded. Each care note he tucked into her muffin tin read simply, "One more moment of sweetness." One evening, as auction bids surged, John noticed Rachel watching him from the guest house's open doorway. He was hunched over her laptop, reading bid amounts while editing gala promo footage. He closed the screen and joined her beneath the string lights. She took his face in her hands, eyes bright with gratitude and fatigue. "Promise me," she said quietly, "that you'll rest when this is over." John nodded, surprised by how deeply he needed her to say it. In that half-dark, he vowed that he would honor her plea, even if his instinct was to push harder. When Rachel's skin showed no new lesions and a slight shrinkage in the treated area, John surprised her with an at-home celebration. He strung lanterns on their balcony, ordered artisanal cupcakes emblazoned with edible peonies, and played her favorite jazz piano repertoire. They danced slowly in the soft glow, her head resting against his chest. He whispered, "We did this together." And she laughed, the sound soft but triumphant. In that moment, John realized their love had grown stronger in adversity, each trial weaving them tighter. With renewed hope, John resumed limited on-camera hosting for Rachel's streaming channel. He introduced an 8-episode miniseries called Healing Meals with Rachel, hosting partner chefs who demonstrated high-nutrient recipes designed for cancer patients. Rachel made cameo appearances, smiling approval, a nod of encouragement, while John conducted the kitchen banter. Crew members noted that he seemed more relaxed, a subtle shift from the tight shoulders and watchful eyes of weeks before. He took their feedback to heart, instituting a policy that no segment would run longer than 4 takes to reduce Rachel's fatigue. Beyond their own channel, John leveraged these segments to raise awareness for pancreatic cancer research. He placed donation links directly within video descriptions and secured matching contributions from corporate sponsors. In less than a month, they raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, an astonishing figure that both moved and humbled him. Rachel, overseeing the totals from her recliner, told him he'd turned our kitchen into a lifeline for others. John felt the weight of that achievement. Their personal battle had galvanized a community of hope. In the early days of November, just as the crisp autumn wind began to bend the city maples, John took Rachel on a final short getaway to their favorite country inn. He had arranged for the innkeeper to serve cream-steeped pancakes and smoked salmon quiches at sunrise. They sipped coffee on a screened porch, watching dew droplets catch the morning light. Rachel closed her eyes, breathing in the scent of pine and possibility. John stroked her hand and said, "This is our true homecoming." For both of them, the regained routines, simple meals, restful mornings, tender being together, had unveiled a new chapter defined not by illness, but by gratitude. As they drove back to the city, John glanced at Rachel stitching pages into her memoir's final chapter, a passage titled "The Sweet Spot." He realized that their story, once ruled by fear, had become an affirmation of love's resilience. He reached over, squeezed her hand, and said, "Whatever comes next, we'll face it side by side." Rachel opened her eyes and smiled, the iconic grin he fell in love with years ago. And in that smile, John found the promise he needed. Their partnership would endure, nourished by every dish they shared and every vow they fulfilled, no matter what tomorrow brought. Cumulative word count, 3550. Ready for next section now, please? In the dawn's soft glow, John strode quietly into the kitchen to set the stage for Rachel's first full day of unrestricted cooking in weeks. He assembled stations on the Marble Island, one for fresh produce, another for precision instruments, mandolin, microplane, specialized measuring spoons, and a third with stacks of vibrant, handwritten recipe cards. Today marked the release of Rachel's memoir excerpt on a morning talk show, and he wanted everything perfect. Rachel emerged wearing a crisp linen shirt and a pair of comfortable slacks. She paused at the island, taking in the sight of ruby-red heirloom tomatoes, emerald basil leaves, and golden sea salt poured into small glass bowls. John had arranged her favorite Le Creuset Dutch oven to her right and her grandmother's wooden cutting board to her left. The setup felt like a homecoming. Everything she needed at arm's length, none of the physical strain she'd endured. She reached for a bundled bunch of chives and crushed them against the microplane, breathing in the herb's bright aroma. John watched her hands, steady and sure, and marveled at how the smallest routines had become triumphs. With the cameras rolling for the full return episode, Rachel began her narrative. "This kitchen has seen every chapter of my life, from simple weeknight dinners to life's greatest challenge. Today, we reclaim our joy, one recipe at a time." John, standing just off camera, offered nods of encouragement. As she drizzled olive oil and began searing small cubes of pancetta in the laziest leap of flame, she made a lighthearted quip about her chemo diet protocols. John pressed the talkback button and whispered, "That's perfect, darling." She cast him a warm glance and repeated, "Seize the flame, but stay gentle." It was a mantra born of her restored strength. After the main course, an artful lemon chicken confit, served beside wilted spinach, Rachel transitioned to the dessert, a warm apple cinnamon crisp. As cinnamon scented the room, she shared a heartfelt message. "No one fights alone. We ended chemo on this very spoon of comfort." Let every bite remind you of the love and support that carries you forward. At that moment, John's eyes misted on live television. In post-production notes, he told editors, "Let her words linger, so viewers feel the weight beyond the recipe." Once filming wrapped, John traded roles and donned an apron to test the leftover crisp while Rachel rested. He carried a bowl to her bedside and propped it on a small side table. She took a spoonful, paused to savor it, and then said softly, "This is the taste of surviving." John pressed his lips against her forehead, overcome by gratitude for each crisp bite, each shared sentence, each step of their journey. In the days that followed, John oversaw a nationwide book tour with Rachel's memoir. They traveled in an RV retrofitted with their mobile kitchen, stopping at independent bookstores and community centers nationwide. At each event, they cooked one small dish from the book's final chapter on gratitude, garlic roasted root vegetables, symbolizing Earth's humble gifts. John moderated Q&A sessions, fielding questions about treatment, nutrition, and emotional resilience. Audiences responded with standing ovations. He could feel the stories of so many survivors mirrored in Rachel's narrative. Back home, John finally allowed himself a night off. He lit a single candle in the kitchen, poured a neat bourbon, Rachel's celebratory drink once she could taste alcohol again, and raised his glass to the silent counters, the stilled cameras, and the quiet miracle of her return. He toasted the empty air and whispered, "To us, to her, to the life we build every day." Now, Rachel's husband stands at the intersection of career and caregiving, having guided her through diagnosis, treatment, surgery, and recovery. Each recipe rediscovered, each segment filmed, each chapter published became more than content. It was proof of their shared strength. John knows the road ahead may still have twists and turns, but every dish they cook, every plate they share, carries the promise of survival. And that, he believes, is the greatest recipe of all. In the weeks that followed Rachel's triumphant return, John found himself navigating uncharted territory as both husband and co-host, balancing her ongoing care with the demands of their expanding platform. Each morning began with a review of her latest blood panel results. Rising counts meant she could push a bit further in the kitchen. A dip meant rest and gentle encouragement. John's role shifted fluidly. Sometimes line producer, sometimes comforter, always steadfast companion. As Rachel regained her strength, they decided to channel their experience into something larger than any single episode. Together, they conceived Cooking with Courage, a limited digital series spotlighting home chefs around the country who had faced illness, loss, or personal hardship and found strength in their own kitchens. John handled outreach, combing social media and fan mail to identify stories that resonated with Rachel's journey. He spoke by phone with each prospective guest, offering empathy and assuring them their voices would be honored. Rachel joined each episode via video hookup from her guest house, smiling in her signature yellow scarf, while John filmed in family kitchens, guiding each story with warmth and authenticity. As production of Cooking with Courage took shape, John also safeguarded Rachel's well-being. He negotiated filming schedules around her infusion appointments and physical therapy sessions. Between shooting segments, he arranged for nutrient-packed soups and smoothies crafted by their nutritionist friend, ensuring Rachel could taste and share them without overtaxing her healing system. Crew members noticed John carrying a battered recipe binder filled with annotated adjustments. Water ratios increased, spice blends moderated, to keep flavors vibrant yet gentle on her recovering palate. Off-screen, John spearheaded a companion cookbook, Meals of Hope, featuring recipes from the series' guests as well as Rachel's own adaptations for cancer-friendly diets. He coordinated with the publisher, liaising on layout designs to include personal testimonials and photography that captured the emotional core of each recipe. When proofs arrived, John and Rachel sat side by side at their kitchen table, leafing through pages of golden biscuits, hearty stews, and luminous salads, each image a testament to resilience and connection. Behind the scenes, John leveraged their network to secure distribution agreements that funneled royalties from both the series and the cookbook into pancreatic cancer research institutions. He negotiated matching donations from cookware brands and grocery partners, turning each appliance sale and pantry staple into a catalyst for funding clinical trials. In boardroom calls, his calm yet resolute voice reminded corporate sponsors that every dollar had potential to fuel new therapies, an appeal grounded in the lived reality of his wife's fight. Meanwhile, John himself faced the quiet repercussions of caregiving. Friends greeted him with dinners delivered to their door, urging him to take breaks. He accepted invitations for sunrise yoga and afternoon walks with college-age nieces, knowing that his own health would matter in the long run. Some nights, he allowed himself 15 minutes of solitude in their library, flipping through old travel journals that predated Rachel's diagnosis, remembering adventures in Tuscany and Bali. In those pages, he recaptured joy and found renewed determination. On air, Cooking with Courage resonated deeply with audiences. Comments poured in from viewers in recovery, caregivers on the front lines, and families seeking solace through food. John read these messages aloud each evening to Rachel, who lay nestled under a knitted throw embroidered with their initials. As tears welled in their eyes, they saw the concentric circles of impact. One couple's sovereignty in their kitchen, now rippling outward into a vast community of shared generosity and hope. In private moments, John reminded Rachel of the promise he made in that hospital hallway, to build each day with intention, love, and unwavering care. Now, as he watched her laugh with a guest chef over a bowl of fragrant carrot ginger soup, each spoonful a testament to survival, he knew she was fulfilling that vow. More than cameras and scripts, this series had given them a renewed sense of purpose, to transform hardship into nourishment, fear into sustained compassion. As autumn leaves began to drift beyond their windows, John arranged a small celebration marking 1 year since her diagnosis. They gathered close friends and family in their sunlit garden, tables laden with meals of hope, dishes. Rachel, emboldened by wellness, presented a stirring toast to meals made with heart and to the hands that guide them. John raised his glass, eyes bright with pride, and added, "To you, my love, who taught us all that the best recipes are those we share when life demands our courage." Applause and tears rippled across the gathering, closing a chapter of fear and opening one of enduring inspiration. Tonight, as Rachel rests and John prepares for tomorrow's episode of Cooking with Courage, they carry forward a simple truth. In the crucible of crisis, love can become the most powerful ingredient of all. And though their path may still curve unpredictably, every meal they cook, every story they tell, stands as proof that when we face tragedy together, we can transform our pain into a feast of resilience.